In. We'll let them in. Good evening, everyone. I'm Suzanne Taylor King, and we're here for the July summer light edition of Coach Conversations. And tonight, Chris is going to talk about briefly and engage us in some amazing conversation about up-leveling your prospecting and your sales process. And one of our conversations prior on Coach Conversations, we talked about the art of the proposal, the art of making sales, how to connect with people more authentically. And a couple of our guests dove into what they're doing on social media. Monty Clark, if you're not connected with him, he's doing some great things, helping coaches get more connected on LinkedIn. And he talked about how to authentically post on LinkedIn and connect with your ideal customer. So we're kind of continuing that same conversation about how we put ourselves out there in a more up-leveled way and attract those people to us that are really our ideal fit clients. So we're going to introduce each other first, or introduce yourselves first. I'm Suzanne Taylor King, mental performance coach for entrepreneurs. I focus on presence and personality and helping my clients really step out into the world in a more confident way, whether that's business coaching, life coaching, or emotional intelligence coaching. And I created this conversation specifically because they were the conversations I wanted to have with other coaches. And I think that's why it's resonated with people. This is the fewest amount of people that I've had. I did have to reschedule this month to another date because of an impromptu vacation. So I appreciate you guys being here, even though we rescheduled to this week. And Chris, introduce yourself.
I am Coach Chris. I have a sales and business consulting business that I do, and I specifically work with the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, so the home services. But I do work outside of that. I do help others with their sales and with their business. And really, we get into sales process, creating a sales process, sales metrics, KPIs, key performance indicators, things of that nature that really help people to understand how to work with sales and how to watch sales in a productive way.
Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
David George Brooke.
David George Brooke, that gratitude guy. Thank you for inviting me. Always great to be here. I just got back from the Seahawks training camp, and I'm like just like a sponge that's been like baked in the sun for like 4 hours. And so I'm like just like all gaga here. But my primary thing as that gratitude guy is keynote speaking as my number one thing that I do. And number two is coaching, which is gratitude coaching based on the philosophies that I have about how you can enhance your life by embracing an attitude of gratitude. I also do some books and journals and some online courses. I now have a new merchandise shop, which is doing quite well on the website, which is really neat. But the biggest thing, and I shouldn't put this in the introduction, but I forget where it came from. There's so many networking events, masterminds, and things I'm a part of. I'm trying to do a better job of keeping track of who I met, how I met them, and what we talked about as a follow-up. And of course, Coach Chris is a good example lately. He and I have talked a couple of times and have another one scheduled in a couple of weeks, which I'm always looking forward to already. But whoever said it to me, and it was like this whole new, if you want, I'm drawing a blank on the exact line. If you want to serve, no, there it is. The more you serve, the more you earn. And I just find it really interesting because I've served a couple of people lately and they've both become clients quite recently. And I should have known better, but it's just when somebody asks you, how can I work with you after you're serving them and not talking to them about what invoice you want to send them? It's amazing how well that works. I know that's not part of the introduction, but it's quite enlightening. I was quite thrilled. So that is me.
Well, awesome. And I think that'll tie in really nicely to our conversation tonight. So, Kathy, thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. So yeah, I saw the meeting last time and I thought, oh, it was then. And then I saw that you rescheduled it. So that worked out really well,
I had to
actually,
go to
for me.
Jamaica with my husband for 5 days. I'm sorry.
Man. Oh, that's funny. I am a general life coach and virtual assistant, and what I specialize in is helping other coaches and service providers with with streamlining and simplifying, automating their onboarding processes. That's it.
Well, I love how focused you are. I got that from our conversation last time. I look forward to future conversations that you're just really specific about what you do and who you serve, and that's going to serve you in the long run. I love that.
Thank you.
All right, so let's hop into what we're going to talk about tonight. I asked Chris to do this kind of last minute and talk about, we've had a conversation about up-leveling our prospecting and up-leveling our sales process, which that goes along with up-leveling your offers and your service. The more that comes with your programs, the more assets that you bring. I don't mean tangible assets, but the more experience you have, the more clients you've coached and worked with. I feel as though that adds to your pricing, that adds to what you're bringing to the table to an individual or a group. So I know I need to up level my follow-up and my sales process, and that sequence of things that happen. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this tonight, Chris.
Okay. No pressure whatsoever.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
Okay. We're casual. We're casual. Don't worry about it.
Well, we're going to have a casual conversation. No, I've learned so much. Actually, I had a friend that I've known for probably, gosh, it's been almost 10 years now. And when I first moved back to Atlanta, she was working in the department of this HVAC company that I was working with, that I just started working with. And she was amazing. She was fun. Well, she moved out to California to pursue this whole different thing, right? And she just kind of went on this adventure almost, right? And then she ended up working with one of the great SaaS companies out there that's just, I mean, going gangbusters and doing all these things. So anyway, long story longer. So she took some time off the first half of the year for mental health reasons. She wanted to get her heart and her mind together and get everything focused the way that she needed to. And in the meantime, she learned Spanish. She literally dove in and immersed herself in Spanish. And so now she said, I can officially say I'm bilingual. And so I reached out to her. I was like, that's awesome. Congratulations. Glad to hear you're taking care of yourself. And I said, I'm always learning. I always just feel like I'm in this constant space of learning. And it doesn't matter where I go. I'm never the smartest person in the room. I may have expertise in this particular area, and I can talk very much to this. But the rest of it, I feel like there's so much more to learn. And even with this expertise that I have, I'll sit at the feet, right? I want to sit at the feet and I want to learn. And it's such a refreshing kind of mindset to have, right? And so when she reached back out to me, she actually said, you've always been that way. You've always been a learner, teacher, natural kind of, that type of vibe. And so, I don't know. We're going to dive off the deep end. I call it the woo-woo. I call it the woo-woo world. And there are things that you get into in your life and you start to see and you start to figure out. One of the things I've learned about myself in the last several years is that I am a manifester. And what that means is that I project in my head what things will be like, and then they become that way. Okay. So think about that. If you project what you want your business to be like, if you project what your clients are to be like, if you say, I only want to work with these type of clients, then you'll only work with those kind of clients. If you don't, if you say, I'm good for everybody, I'm here for anybody and everybody, guess who you'll be good for? Anybody and everybody, right? So when we focus, and I love what Kathy said, she was very focused on laser pointed, if you will, on what she did and who she spoke to and why she spoke to them, right? And for me, when I niched down to the home services industry, that was a huge relief for me. That was a huge burden lifted off of my shoulders because it taught me to really focus on the thing that I'm good at and the people that I'm good at, and the area of expertise that I have really fits well within this group. Now, I've also struggled with imposter syndrome and am I good enough? And I grew up in an environment where I was never good enough. And so that just followed me through life. And so it wasn't until recently when I'm really starting to get help with that to say, I am good enough, right? The old Stewart from Saturday Night Live, right? I'm
Mm,
good enough and people like me.
mm,
But the reality is this, we are good enough. It's why we have our own business. It's why we do the things that we do, right? And I have been listening to this Uplevel Your Peer Group podcast by a guy named Cliff um, Ravenscraft, I believe is his last name.
yeah.
Anyway, Cliff is this amazing, excuse me, this amazing guy. He started doing masterminds years ago, blah, blah, blah. And I was talking with Suzanne and Mation the other day about, I think I really want to do this. And of course, if you've ever spent any time with Mation's like, all right, so when's it going to be on the calendar? When do you want to get this done? When are you going to do this? When's this going to happen? And
Mhm.
it's like, stop pushing me. I just said I really might want to do it someday, maybe, right? And he's like, okay, when? And I was like, you know what? He's right. It's time. It's time to do these things and push these things out. And so, and I know David did something very similar. He put out an email to his group, to his people, and he said, hey, I'm starting a mastermind. And here's what it is, and here's how it's going to work. And I did the same thing. And I threw it out, and I only have about 400 people that I have in my contact list that's worth emailing, right? So I sent it out to these 400 people, of which probably 10% of them are you guys, right? They're people that I work with on a regular basis, or I talk with on
Mhm.
a regular. And you're not going to join the group, and that's okay. I understand that. But for me, it was a stretch because you listen to this guy Cliff, and Cliff says, "Hey, I've got mastermind groups that I charge $1,000 a month," and I went, "Ooh, $1,000 a month." Well, a buddy of mine signed up for it. He's paying $12,000 to be with this guy, once a week and 90 minutes and getting all these right. And I was like, okay. Well, I put out my mastermind group and I said it's going to be X, and it's not $1,000 because why? I don't believe enough that I bring that much value to the table, but I know that my value is X, right? Or I believe my value is X. What's really interesting is I did put the email out there, and within an hour, I got my first client.
Mm.
Within an hour, I got my first client, and I was scared because I was like, oh, am I charging too much? I just about 30 minutes ago, somebody texted me and said, hey, did you send me the email? I thought I saw it, did miss it. And he said, oh, I found it. I'll be signing up. And I'm like,
Wow.
what? Yeah, right. It's like, when we throw things out, when we put things out there to the universe, to God, to wherever you believe, right? When you put things out there, you manifest what you believe. And I become a firm believer that when we do this with sales, I learned a long time ago, if I do the work, the money will follow. Now, how do I know that? I've been 100% commission for almost 18 years now, off and on. In fact, I believe in being 100% commission so much that when I was offered a VP of sales role, they were going to give me a salary plus, and I said no. And the owner of the company did one of these. He went, "What?" And I said, "No, I want to be paid 100% commission. Just like my people go, I will go."
Mhm.
And he was like, really? And I said, yeah. And I think we ought to structure it this way and do this and this and this. And he agreed. Right. And so we
Wow.
came up with this plan. And my then wife at the time was a little bit upset with me because she's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm living and dying by my people, by the things that I put into them, right? By the resources that I bring to the table, the value that I bring to them. Those are the resources that are going to feed us. Right now, she didn't have a bad job either. She was doing quite well, but at the same time, it brought some animosity into the fold. Right, it brought some, wait a minute, are you sure you're going to do this? The reality is this: I believe so much in the value that I brought to the table and what I could help the others do that it manifested above and beyond what I was making or what I was going to make. That's the really cool thing, right? It was one of those where I was like, we're scared to death. And in the first couple of months, it was January, February. Those are horrible months, by the way, for HVAC. So guess what? We didn't do very well. So guess what? I didn't make a whole lot of money. But then March came, and then April came, and then May came, and then June came. And guess what? They sold the company.
Mm.
And so, good news, bad news, that worked out very well for them. 3 months later, I was back in a truck. I was selling again, right? I was no longer the VP of sales, which was okay under new ownership. But I say all that to say, I know enough to know that if you work and you put in the time and you do the things you're supposed to do. So we talk about up leveling our clientele. We talk about up leveling our sales. We up level, right? How do we up level these things? Number one, you have to believe that what you're doing is true, right? Believe that what you're doing is consistent, it's true, and it's going to pay for what you want to do.
Mm.
All right. One of the things I tell myself when I do meditations or if I'm in hot yoga and freaking out, I manifest what I need. And actually, somebody helped me and corrected it and said, I manifest what I require. So think about that. You manifest what you require. What is required for you to live, for you to have the lifestyle, for you to develop the retirement, for you to put your kids to a certain level of education, to go on vacation to Jamaica every 6 months, right? Whatever it is, if that's the lifestyle you want, but you manifest that by the things that you do. So how do you up level? Well, number one, you have to believe that you can up level. And there's a great book. If you haven't read it, it's called Value-Based Fees by Alan Weiss. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to read it. Anybody that's setting their fees based on the value that they provide. That is a phenomenal book. And here's what I learned from it. I came from an industry, and I'm still in an industry. The heating and air industry is very much time and material, right? You do a job for a certain amount of time and you have a certain amount of materials. That's what you get paid for. It's time and materials. Very, very, very rarely do you ever pay for the value of the person that is sitting working on your equipment. Think about that. Now, when you run across those people, and I know Suzanne, up in your neck of the woods, I know several companies up there. There's one called Horizon Services. Okay. That was the company that bought us, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I know them. But that company believes in the value that their people provide across the board. And so when you call them, they're going to be appearing more than the other companies. And I'll just tell you that right now, they will. However, the value that they provide is above and beyond everybody else. So I know David, I don't know Kathy that well. I think we've met a couple of times, but the reality is this. I know we all provide value. We all provide a value that is in some ways undescribable to other people, right? They don't understand our value. And so we have to learn how to communicate our value to them. And when we do that, we understand how we can bring that up and charge what we are worth. The thing that value-based fees taught me was simply this: don't charge for time and materials. There's no such thing. You should never charge for time and materials because it's never about time and materials. When you start doing that, you might as well punch a clock. Okay. Because that's what you're saying. You're saying my time is only worth $150 an hour, $100 an hour. Your time is worth what your time is worth. It could be $500 an hour. It could be $1,000 an hour. It could be $1,500 an hour. It doesn't matter. Do you bring the value to your clients? Not what you think is valuable, but what they think is valuable. So, because we're our own worst enemy, our minds work against us. And so, David, would you pay $1,000 to be in a mastermind group with you, doing the things that you're going to want to talk about?
Absolutely.
Okay. I love that. And that's great. So let me ask you the question. Are you willing to charge that to your clients? And can you help them to see the value of this mastermind being $1,000 a month. And I'm just using a mastermind because we start talking about it. But do we see the value that we provide for other people? Because a lot of times we're our own worst enemy, and we think, I'm not sure I'd pay $1,000. I'm not sure I'd pay 500. I'm not sure I pay the fees that I'm charging, right? So that's why we lower our fees. We lower our value. How do we up level that? Number one, you have to believe that, right? We've got to believe that we have this value, and then you follow through with it. So then you provide the value, right? The things that you know you're capable of doing. And the key here is to really be careful, because we as coaches, as consultants, right, we want to go and we want to do everything and give them everything in the first month or 2 weeks that we work with them. And then what have we done? We've overvalued ourselves, right? So now they're getting way more than what they're paying for. And so now it becomes this balancing act. Well, how do I bring it back into this Zen, right? How do I bring it back into this yin and yang, right? How do I give and get? And, it's got to be this give and take. So those are the things that I think of when I talk about up leveling, in terms of when you go to prospect. Are you talking to the people that can afford you, right? I was at a networking event a month or two ago, and I was doing a speaking part, and I said, no offense, but I know most of you cannot afford me, and that's okay. You're not necessarily my clients. I said, I'm not trying to be a jerk about that, but what I bring to the table and what I do, I'm not cheap. I'm not, and I'm not going to make apologies for that. And they understood it, right? They understood the message that was being brought to them. And it's not a cockiness to say, hey, I know that this is not my clientele. And we know it. We know who our people are and who they aren't when we walk into rooms. And it's not that we're smarter than the room, but you just know there's certain things you're just like, this one's probably not right. And then you get to ones where you're like, holy crap, what am I doing here? Right? And you're like, I love being here, but man, help me to get my mind to that spot, right? And so we just have to do that, right? So when we're meeting with people, we understand how we can level up just by understanding who we're meeting with and who the people are that we want to meet with and who can afford what we're charging. And believe it or not, they're out there. So that's enough of me preaching. I'm going to stand down off my soapbox.
So Chris, let me ask you a question that
Yeah.
right at the outset of what you said.
Yeah.
I'll follow it up with a couple of comments from my personal experience. How do you counter the effects of the imposter syndrome?
Boy, that's huge, right? Because we can fall into this trap that says, I'm not good enough. Or, man, if they find out what? David, you've got years and years and years of experience, right? And that's nothing to shake a stick at. I mean, all of us have years of experience. Don't let my bald head fool you. I'm 55 years old. I've been 30 plus years in sales. And the biggest thing, David, I would encourage you with is, if you're not doing it, find something inspirational to read every day. Find something that gives you inspiration. I'm going to throw this out there. Suzanne's going to laugh. I wrote a book. It's a daily inspiration, right? We know that. How did that book come about? It came about because I was reading daily inspirations every day. So find something that works for you. And I'm not saying it needs to be my book. I'm saying find something that works for you, that inspires you. It could be the Bible. It could be Little Red Book of Selling. It could be, right, daily touchstones. It could be whatever. But find something that inspires you, one or two, three things, whatever it is, that they're these daily inspirations. And then number two, David, and you're a huge proponent of this because you have a book that says it's like this, and I bought it and it's sitting at my house. But it's your daily journaling, right? What are you writing in that gratitude book? What are you writing in there that you're grateful for? And one of the things you can be grateful for that triggers us to move our head away from this imposter syndrome is, I am good enough. And I do know these things, and I can be this person. And guess what, David? You are that person. You are an inspiration to people. You are very knowledgeable. You are very good at what you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing the things that you're doing, right? You wouldn't be in a position that that people respect you and people know you and they trust you and they want to work with you. And so don't be fooled by the negativism that goes on in your head, right? And there's plenty of books out there. I know Suzanne probably knows plenty of them too, but I read The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. And that for me, that was huge, was to overcome the imposter syndrome, was just to surrender to the things that are being presented to you. And when you do that, when you finally figure that out, it's like, oh man, look at this abundance that's waiting for me. And my girlfriend and I, we talk about this almost weekly, right? Where we're sitting down having conversations at dinner and stuff. And it's just like, can you believe that we get to do the things that we get to do? And it's not like we've got this, fantastic life and we're living in these mansions. We're not, right? She's got a nice little house here in Decatur, Georgia, and I live in a townhouse up in Woodstock, Georgia, right? I mean, so we have these nice little things, but again, we manifest what we require. So if you require more, then you'll get more. But again, how do you, and that's all part of it, David, is just, you've got to find the inspiration, start writing it down, write down the things that inspire you, write down the things that you want, the goals, the things that you think, oh man, this is just way out there, but why not? Hey, I want to start a mastermind group where it's $1,000 a month and I want to get 10 to 12 people in it. And I'm going to start with one group, but then eventually maybe I'll go to 2. Go ahead, do the math in your head real quick. 10 people a month at $1,000, that's 10 grand a month. Now you do 2 of those, that's 20 grand a month. That's not bad. Do you want to make that kind of money? Is that what is that where you really want to go? And do you believe that you can bring the people that'll want to do that because of the wisdom that you have in facilitating that group? And again, I'm just using that as an example. When David and I talked the other day, he's talking about this book, the gratitude book that he has, right? The journal. That's his bestseller. I know why. It's why I bought it. I got it. I'm like, well, duh, this is easy. Come on. But it speaks to people, and you speak to people, David. So whenever you get those thoughts, and I'll go biblical on you for just a second. There's nothing wrong with the initial thought that you have. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I'm not sure I can do this. Nothing wrong with that. Now, what do you do that next? What's the next step on that, on what you do with that thought? Do you continue that thought and say, yeah, you're right. I'm not sure I can do it. Or do you say, you know what? That's not me. That's not my mindset. That's not who I am. Now you get rid of it. And guess what? That's not who you are. But that's right. It's just like with gratitude. How do we get into gratitude mode? We have to talk about it. We have to do it. We have to be it. We have to write it. We have to listen to it. We have to, right? We have to be it.
Yeah.
Chris, what was the book, The Surrender of what?
The Surrender Experiment.
Experiment. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
And the guy's name is Michael A. Singer.
Because I actually ordered, after you and I talked, I ordered value-based fees.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna listen to that. And I just find it interesting. I don't know if age has anything to do with it. Probably doesn't. I'm easily the oldest person here. But I always had that driven into my head that you have to first walk, and then you get to jog, and then you get to run, and you can't do it that order. You can't just start and just run. There's steps you have to go through. And I remember that this whole thing about money is because I remember a good friend of mine told me about, I don't know, when I started this 7-8 years ago, a couple of years into it, you should be charging $5,000 for a talk. I was charging like $500, $1,000. And I'm going, I can't charge $5,000. But I went through the steps, and you just keep going. And whether it's the books you read, I do a daily inspiration podcast, something every single day as part of my 2-hour walk and stuff. So that's a very good point. Of course, never missed a day writing the gratitude journal, of course. But the thing that I found interesting is a buddy called me the other day, and he said, when's your next talk? And I said, it's this Sunday. And he says, and this is why good friends can really be helpful. And he says, and he's real nosy. How much you getting paid for it? I said, $5,000. And he goes, listen to you. I remember a time when you would have said, it's the end all be all. I'm hit the top of the mountain. And now I'm getting $10,000 to $12,000 to $15,000. But it took so long, and it almost feels like there has to be, again, you have to crawl before you walk and that kind of thing. And so, and that's why I find the whole imposter syndrome was so interesting. What are the ways you can overcome that? And what are the ways and all those things, the inspirations? What does the gratitude journal do for me every day? It reinforces all the blessings I have in my life and all the abundance, and gratitude turns what you have into enough. So I do practice what I preach, but it took a little longer than I thought. And I'm getting there, but that's why I'm going to look forward to that book too, because I thought even on some of the higher speeches now, so I go talk for 60 minutes and I get $12,000. How can this be? But that's because I'm looking at it the wrong way. And
That's
I'm not
not
looking of 70 years of experience.
Right.
That's not enough. It's good, but it's not enough. And here's why. Can I share? You know who Les Brown is, right?
Oh, of
Do you know the
course.
story? You know the story of Les Brown?
Yeah, I want to think you told me this when we talked the time or
Okay.
two before, but tell it again.
So Les Brown, when he first decided that he wanted to speak, he wanted to go and publicly speak. He said, I want to do this. My understanding was he said, I will not speak until I'm paid $30,000. And he went a couple of years before he got $30,000. But guess what happened when he got that first one? He got 2 or 3 more that same year. Just like that. Right. So no offense, David, but sometimes you can run. You got these teenagers out there that are making, at 16 and 17 and 20 and 21, right? They didn't finish school. They're not doing that. They're becoming these influencers or whatever. Right. And they're making millions doing what?
Yeah.
Doing what they do. Right.
Yeah.
And you, with all this wisdom and everything, why do we need to walk before we run, before we jog, before we whatever, right? Yeah. Why can't we run? We've been jogging and walking for years, David. We've been doing this for years. And I look for the day that I make 5,000 in speaking gigs or 10,000, but I can guarantee you this, the number that you should be charging, I think it should be far more than that. And it doesn't need to be 300,000, but it needs to be, you could easily get away with charging $30,000, $50,000 for what you do and the experience that you bring and your background. Oh my goodness. There are people that want to talk to you, that want to listen to you and will hang on your every word. They will.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Coach Chris.
Yeah. Something that came up for me when you were talking was a friend of mine last week. We met probably 10 years ago. We were in a coaching program together and we ended up, becoming friends, and we did some traveling and some speaking together early in our careers. And we've always just kind of supported, each other's offers. Like, what are you doing? Tell me about it. Yeah, that sounds good. How about you add this? She's been a guest in coaching programs that I've done. I've been a guest in her coaching programs. And she said something that triggered me last week about her new program that's, $10,000 for this 3-month thing. And she's got 17 people signed up for it. And I was like, oh, I was just like, oh, dude. And I was so happy for her, right? Like, so yeah, you go, that's amazing. And she said, I saw that. And I said, so what? She said, that little twinge where you were like, I want that, right? And I said, yeah, I do want that. And she said, well, why aren't you asking for that price? She said, you're selling something very comparable to what I offer, and you're charging $3,500. She said, pull that offer off the table and stop talking to people who can't afford $3,500 and start talking to people who think $10,000 is nothing to have someone with your experience in their corner. And I was just like,
well, you know what the crazy thing is about that is people see, fantastic, David's here. People see the value by what you charge.
yes.
Hey, David, people catch that. People see the value by what you charge. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm only worth $3,500, people are going, man, she's got 30 years of experience, 20 years of experience. She's got this, she's got that. She's saying all these things, but I'm not seeing the value in the price that she's charging, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now it becomes now it becomes a game for them, and they're like, is she worth it? Right? Something's not matching up here. Your fees aren't matching up with the value that I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
And so we get scared and think, oh, I can't charge $10,000, $15,000 for that. And it's like, why not? Why not?
Mhm.
I can tell you right now, David, I'm working with David. I'm working with David next week, right? And I appreciate David so much. I had a conversation with his wife and everything. So, but he said, hey, thanks for this. I'm only going to charge you this. I didn't even blink. I'm like, I didn't even hesitate when he sent me the thing. I'm like, I'm gonna 90 minutes. Yes. Is that all I can get? Can I get more? Can I get more?
Uh-huh.
But I know the value that David brings to the table. I know because I've spent time with him, because I've been around him, and then I've watched what he does and how he works. And so David Brooks, same thing for you, right? You have this value that you bring to the table. Kathy, you have this value that you bring to the table, right? That we all bring to the table, and that we should be able to get. We should be able to work less and make more.
Mm-hmm. I help my clients do it all the time.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
Well, David, I just want to say, David, how do you pronounce your last name? And then take a minute and introduce yourself to us. And thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. And thank you, Chris, for that wonderful introduction, or that wonderful plug. David Dorrier is my name. As you can see from my hat, I'm retired Air Force. I have been involved in the training and development business for about 30 years. I started while I was in the Air Force. And during that time, I've done a number of things, from writing all types of training materials to delivering all types of training to training trainers to train. And today, my business is all about working with subject matter experts and helping them to be better facilitators, better at engaging their audience.
Love it. Well, you have a great podcasting voice.
Well, I left out, I did radio for 12 years. That's why
I could tell. I could tell.
You worked on it.
And I would encourage maybe a part-time Santa gig this Christmas.
Well, I've been doing Santa for 30 years. Yes. 28 of those years, I had the strap-on beard and all of that. You can check out my website, santahohoho.com. And if you're here in the Atlanta area, I will go anywhere my sleigh will bring me.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, Chris has been kind of leading us in a conversation about up-leveling your sales and your prospecting. And it really all comes down to this mindset we have to do, right? And I've sold things, for $20,000. I've sold things for $47. It's actually easier to sell something for $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 than it is to sell something for $47, because it's a different customer that you're talking to. And I think that's really where we're kind of going here. Automated courses or evergreen courses that are less expensive for those people who can't afford to spend time with you. That's how I'm feeling, 14 years into a coaching practice. And I just paid someone, she's helping me redo my LinkedIn profile. And I had to do an intake form. And if anybody wants this intake form, I will tell you that it will literally shift the imposter syndrome because of how she asks for your experience, your credentials, accomplishments, volunteer experience. And by the time I was done typing about myself and cutting and pasting all of this stuff, I was like, whoa, holy crap, who is this person? This is amazing. And it helped kind of remember what is behind me, what is literally coming to the table when I sit down. You know, there's businesses that have failed, there's businesses that have franchised, there's businesses that I've sold. And when you're on social media interacting, you're forgetting about all of that past experience. So I would love to talk a little bit about how to stand in that experience, whether it's years of experience, whether it's monetarily, your experience, coaching number of clients, the number of people that you've worked with. How do you stand in that without feeling, how do you talk about it without, I go back to this old story of bragging about myself. Like, yeah, don't brag about yourself, Suzanne. That's not nice. How do you get out of that mindset?
Go ahead. I was gonna say, I'm
Yeah.
gonna let others talk on this one. Go ahead. I've
Well,
got some thoughts, but go.
I think one of the things that you brought up was that questionnaire, that what I have found while coaching folks, it's a lot easier for me to coach somebody else and to pull this information out of them
Yeah.
that they already had inside of them. All these doors were in their head,
Mhm.
but they just didn't quite see them. But it took someone or something like your questionnaire on the
Mhm.
outside to make you think about something in a different way. I know
Yeah.
that I need a coach. I have a coach because there's so many. This is what I do for a living, was create presentations for people, but
Mhm.
I'm so close to it. I have a hard time creating my own presentations. I need help. So I think it's that third eye or that other voice that to help you to pull it out of you.
Yeah, that makes sense, because when someone else was asking me the questions and I had to give responses, maybe that's why I'm a great podcast guest. You know, if I'm on somebody else's podcast, people have said, wow, that's an amazing interview, or that was an amazing talk. But if I was to go on Facebook Live and just talk, it wouldn't turn out like that. So it's the magic of somebody else pulling it out of you. Love that. Anybody else?
I think there's a number of things that you can do to kind of keep it on the forefront, right? Because we want to forget all those things. We want to forget some of the things that we've done just because they may have been attached to a bad experience, or there may be something that it's always been 15 years and I can't bring up that experience. Why not? I bring up experiences that, I worked with Lego toys and I worked with Energizer battery. I bring those examples up all the time, right? Those were a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Lego was 30 years ago and Energizer was probably 33 years ago. So, but why not talk about those experiences, right? There's a way to bring up the experiences, and it's kind of I guess it's like a resume, right? It's having to that one sheeter or the two sheet, right? Two sheets of two sides of information where you've got the information that you need at your beck and call. So when somebody says, hey, what are your experiences? Well, I've done this, 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 and this.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done this and this and this and this and this and this and this, right? Hi, Hillary.
Hi, Hillary.
And so, I think that being able to keep that top of mind or in a place of recognition, it's not bragging about it if you're trying to show the experience that you have, right? And your depth of experience, David, Brooke, his depth of experience, Kathy's depth of experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that we bring to the table that we quite frankly, it's like we're making Thanksgiving dinner and we brought the turkey out and everybody's like, well, where are the sides?
Yeah.
Oh, I left them on the other table. Well, what'd you do that for? Bring them in here.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. It's what's wrong with all the sides? There's nothing wrong with them. They're there. Use them. People want to know about them. People want to know what else is for dinner. One of the favorite stories that I used to tell about my younger brother was we went to my grandmother's house for Thanksgiving or Christmas one year. And grandma she did the full on 22-pound turkey and the leg of lamb and the ham and I mean, literally we had, right, there was all this stuff and it's all over the table. And there was what, 6 of us sitting at the table. And literally before the prayer is done and before the fork is in the food, my little brother looks around and he goes, "Is there more?" I mean, pies are on the table behind us and everything, right? I mean, 4 different kinds of pies and everything. I mean, and he goes, "Is there more?" It's like, but it's that type of experience, right? We have to think in that way. We have an abundance of experience. Why not keep that at the ready to be able to share in an appropriate way so it's not bragging, right?
So I'd like to have Hillary just say a few words about herself, who you are, who you coach, and thanks for joining us. We're a little bit into our conversation. I'll definitely have the replay up for you if you want to catch it. And if everybody would put their contact information in the chat so we can all connect, make sure we're connected to each other on LinkedIn, that would be amazing. Go ahead, Hillary, tell us a little bit about you. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, hi everyone. Had a little trouble getting in here tonight. Well, I am your lymphatic health expert. I promote vibrant life by activating your lymphatic system for better health and that more vibrant life. So I work with women leaders who are looking for strategies to transform their emotional and physical health while reducing stress. So, you know, I am, how can I say, I'm an author, a speaker. I am also, I have a show, 2 shows that I host across LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. One is on every Tuesday. It's called the Vibrant Good Health Show, where I talk about all things that you can do to help your body help you have a more vibrant life and better health. And then on the second show on every Thursday, it's called Let's Get Acquainted. And on that show, I showcase other people. And I usually have a theme at the beginning of the show on the first half. And it is around, like this month is National Anti-Boredom Month. And so we kind of talking points around that. And then in the second half, they get a chance to tell us who they are, what they're doing in the world to help other people. And so that's pretty much who I am. And I'm glad to be here. This is my first time. So thank you.
Yeah, well, welcome. Happy to have you. And I like the way you are attracting people to you. I'm sure that's how I found you to invite you to this. So good job, Hillary.
Great, thank you.
All right. So we have about 10 minutes left. I would love any questions for Chris, any input from Kathy, anything to say about your prospecting or how you need to up level, questions from David or the other David. I'm just going to call you Santa from now on, if that's okay. You're going to have a special place in my heart now. You're stuck with me. You should have never reached out. Just kidding.
Suzanne, David,
Yeah.
Kathy, Hillary, connect with David Dorier. Have a conversation with him.
And I apologize for being late. I was working with a client just before this, but
Quite all right.
could I get to know what Kathy and David a little bit, what they do?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Okay, I'll go.
Go ahead,
I
Kathy.
am a certified life coach, general life coach, but I focus more on my virtual assistant business. And I work with coaches, consultants, and other service providers, setting up a platform called Dubsado. It's a client management system, and we streamline and automate onboarding processes. And I know somebody was talking about doing the follow-ups and things like that. We work that inside of the workflows, and a lot of times it's automated, so you don't even have to think about it. The emails go out for follow-ups. So that's what I do.
Thank you.
Hi, David. I go by the name That Gratitude Guy, and no surprise, my main topic and only topic is gratitude. So it's primarily delivered in keynote speaking. I try to do 2 to 3 to 4 a month, hopefully even more. And also I do coaching, and I get a lot of my coaching clients from my speaking gigs, and also sell my gratitude journals and other books. And I've just completed a couple of online courses. So it's, but the whole coaching, consulting, that whole piece, I just want to continue to fine tune. And I was saying earlier about, I just heard this saying about the more you serve, the more you earn. And I'm just really starting to understand that if you just serve people, all sorts of good stuff happens, and not worry so much about, let me get you signed up and all that kind of thing. So, but but gratitude's my whole focus. And my pet line is gratitude turns what you have into enough. That's me.
Thank you.
My bad.
Are you a member of National Speakers Association?
I was at one time, but it never, I just guess it never really delivered what I thought it would. I thought you get speaking gigs through that, and that's not what it does. And so it's, I met some nice people and did some training and some things like that. But there's a local chapter that's pretty active called NSA Northwest Division or whatever. I live in Seattle, but I might revisit it again. But as I said, I always remember thinking I'll sign up there and you'll get your speaking gigs there, but that was not the case.
All right. Any questions for Coach Chris, or insights that you got from tonight? Or where should we go next in this up-leveling conversation?
Well, what's one good question that you have experienced, Chris, Suzanne, David, or Kathy, or Hillary, that upsell piece? What's a question that's worked really well for you to get them moving to the next step?
One of my favorites is, how is that working for you? Most recently, I will say, when are you going to be, when are you going to say that's enough? Like, when do you get to that point of, I no longer want to struggle with that?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I feel like that sometimes it's different for every person. My last one-on-one client, I asked her, when do you think you'll be ready to not be the smartest person in the room anymore? And she's like, oh, wow. She said, that's totally what's happening.
And what you were saying, while you were saying that, what came to mind was a way to reframe that was, what happens if you don't do anything? You know, or where do you go if you don't do anything? Or what does it look like if you don't do anything?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite as well. I just was writing that down yesterday. Yeah.
A lot of the questions that I ask are really more geared towards my expertise, right? So towards sales. It's how are you doing with sales? Are you satisfied with where you're at currently? When do you want to go on vacation next? When do you want to walk away from your business, right? When do you want to, what are some things that can help them to think from a sales perspective, right? Because the reality is, if we don't sell anything, we don't make anything, right? And so we can be lucky enough to trip over the sales, and people come to us and say, I want to work with you, and they give you X amount of dollars, and that may not be enough, right? So how do you up level it? It now becomes a question of, it's the value that you bring to the table, right? What value are you looking for that would, be valuable enough for your business to move to the next step? And I don't call it the next level. I'm not a fan of that, because I don't know what level they're at. But every journey begins with one step, right? It's the old Chinese proverb, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So what's going to take you to that next step? What's holding you back from making that next move? That's where I get to come in. That's where I get to provide, right, the expertise, and I get to have the 30,000-foot view that doesn't care. And I say don't care because I'm not deep into the woods where I can't see the forest for the trees, right? And that's huge for clients is, do you want somebody who can see your business for what it is and say the things that you need to hear? And then, and David and Hillary, you guys weren't here when I don't think you were here when I said it, but I stopped charging time and materials. And I read a book called Value-Based Fees by Alan Weiss. If you haven't read that, I'd encourage you to, but it's a great book. And the book taught me a lot about doing jobs on a time and material basis, right? And I'm putting the value on my time. And so when I've taken away that and said, this project is going to take me however long it's going to take me, right? But I'll charge you X amount for it.
Right. That's
But
right.
people always want to come back to, well, how long is that going to take you? Right. And then they want to parcel it out to, well, that's $100 an hour. That's $150. That's $200 an hour. It's like, one of my favorite stories is a technician walks into a building and it's a big complex, and they've had several people out to fix the machine, and it couldn't, this AC unit, they couldn't get it fixed. And so they bring in this expert, and like I said, they've had several people out before, they paid him all these money and they still can't fix it. So they get this guy, he comes out and he's there in his old raggy jeans and his torn up shirt, right? He shows up and he listens to it for a minute and he pulls out his hammer and he goes, ting, and he hits it in just the right spot. And all of a sudden, boom, thing works. And the guy gets all upset and he goes, well, I'm not paying you $10,000. That's crazy. He goes, you didn't pay for me to come out and do the work. You paid for my knowledge to know where to hit it. So
Yeah.
we have to keep that in mind, right? We have to keep that in mind, that we know the spots. David knows what to listen for when somebody's speaking, to say, try this, say it this way, right? And that's very, very valuable.
Yeah.
The poor puppy. The poor
My
puppy.
dog agrees. Let me let her out. Well, I'd like to, okay, 1 second. She's a husky, so she's very vocal. I'd like to leave you with some homework. If you're going to join us next month on the, excuse me.
Time to let the dog out. Who let the dog out? Suzanne.
Exactly. I was just
Suzanne.
thinking the same thing.
In case anybody's wondering.
Yeah.
Who
She's
who
out
let
now.
the dog out?
She's out now. It's me. It's my job,
Susan.
even though there's
Susan.
2 other people home.
Right.
So I'd like to leave you with some homework, because I just did this homework of writing down my accomplishments over the last 30 years of being an entrepreneur, and the different businesses, the different things that happen, even the failures, the screw ups, losing a $5 million a year business in a divorce. That was a hard decision, but it was one that I had to make, right? And writing those transformative experiences down just in a list was so helpful to me. And then I looked at also my personal life. What struggles, what things have I overcome? What challenges did I face as an entrepreneur over those years? And I made a list of those. Well, I put them all on a slide for a presentation about myself. Basically my entrepreneurial story. And I included a list of the business things and a list of the personal things. And I didn't even read the list. I just showed the list. And it was a very insightful talk that I gave. Like, people were really intrigued by that vulnerability piece. It's not all sunshine and roses as an entrepreneur. Sometimes your failures are the biggest strengths that you bring to the table. So That's the homework I'd like to leave everybody with, is coming up with your personal list and your business list, struggles, triumphs, hardships, losses, and those failures and screw ups that taught you lessons that you bring to your clients, that they can avoid those failures and screw ups if they work with you. How's that sound?
Yeah. that's
Awesome.
good.
All right, great. All right, let's wrap up. I'm